To leave early today. All right. Today is November 19th. Yep. All right. Okay. Thank you. Today we are doing more of what we've been doing. All right. So today we are going to either try to factor by hand or possibly need to use synthetic division. So if we can't factor by hand, then we have to maybe go to our calculator and use synthetic division to find all the zeros of our polynomial today. And all the zeros means we're finding, hey, what does x equal? And we are looking for real and imaginary solutions. So what you're going to see today is that we're going to be able to see, like if we have to use graphing calculators, you'll be able to see the real zeros, but we won't be able to see the imaginary ones. The imaginary ones we're going to have to solve for. So here we go. Example 1, find all the zeros of the polynomial function.
Yes, I have a question. What time is this class?
10.
10.
Alright, find all the zeros of the polynomial function. We have f of x equals x to the 4th plus 5x squared minus 6. How many terms do you see? 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. Since I have 3 terms, I'm going to try to factor this. To find all the zeros is when our function gets set equal to 0. I'm going to try to double bubble this. What times what is x to the 4th? X squared times x squared. And then last times last has to be negative 6. What times what is negative 6?
3 and 2, negative 3.
Negative 3 and positive 2.
Or negative 6 and plus 1.
Negative 6 and positive 1 or?
6 and 1. Negative 1.
Negative 1 and a positive 6. There we go. Which one do we want?
Negative 1.
Negative 1 and positive 6. And that's really nice. If we get our bubbles down to x squared, we can actually solve those by hand really easily. I just need to find the zeros. So I'm going to go ahead and set each bubble x squared, God bless you, x squared minus 1 equal to 0. How do I solve for x here? Add 1. So I get x squared equals 1. And then what do we do? How do I get rid of the power? How do I get rid of the squared? Square root. Very good. So we're going to take a square root of both sides. And don't forget the plus or minus. The square root and the square cancel out. And I get x equals plus or minus. What is the square root of 1? 1. And those are 2, God bless you, 2 of our zeros. I can do the same thing with my other bubble. X squared plus 6 gets set equal to 0. How do I solve for x? Minus 6. So I get x squared equals negative 6. And then how do I get rid of my squared? Square root. Don't forget the plus or minus. So again, my square root and squared cancel out. I get x equals plus or minus. And what happens when we have a negative under a radical? I and I comes out. Very good. So I'm going to take out that I. So plus or minus I. And can I simplify the square root of 6? No, it just stays radical 6. So we get x equals plus or minus I radical 6. So today, if we can, we want to factor and then set each bubble equal to 0 and solve. Okay. Sometimes we're going to get real solutions, and sometimes we're going to get imaginary solutions. But you'll notice we have two answers here, two real solutions, positive one, negative one. And here we have two imaginary solutions. And when you add up your two reals and two imaginaries, what do you get? You get your power. All right, the highest power. All right, that degree, that highest power of your polynomial should tell you how many answers you're looking for. Okay, that is the sum of the real and imaginary solutions. Here, letter B, x cubed minus 5x squared plus 4x minus 20. How many terms do we have here? 4 terms. And if we have 4 terms, we are going to try to do factor by grouping, which we were just tested on. So again, we're finding the zeros, and that's when our polynomial is equal to 0. So we are going to group and basically look for the GCF over and over and over again. Looking at these first 2 terms, what can I take out of them? X squared can come out. If I take out an x squared, what's left behind? X minus 5, good. When I look at the last 2 terms, what do they have in common? A 4. I'm going to take out the sign as well, positive 4. And when I take out that 4, what's left behind? X minus 5. And then we go again and say, hey, look, they have another common factor. And so we're going to pull that common factor out, and what's left over? What's left behind when I take out that common factor? X squared plus 4. Very good. Now when I'm looking at my bubbles, I have an x squared and I just have x to the first. I can solve both of those just by setting my bubble equal to 0. Set each bubble equal to 0. How do I get x by itself? Add 5. So I get x equals 5. That's one answer. And here I have x squared plus 4 equals 0. How do I solve for x now? Subtract 4, so I get x squared equals negative 4. And then what do I need to do? Square root. Don't forget? Plus or minus. Very good. So we get x equals plus or minus. What happens when we have a negative under my radical? An I comes out. And what is the square root of 4? 2. So we get plus or minus 2i. How many solutions do we have? 3 solutions. We've got 1 real one, 2 imaginary solutions for a total of 3. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the fundamental theorem of algebra. The sum of the solutions is the highest power. Okay? All right, questions so far? You're doing the same thing tomorrow? Yep. Except they might be higher powers, but all the same methods are still going to work. There's only 2 problems that don't sort of fit the mold. So you're going to do lots of this tomorrow, factor and solve. It's quite fun. Thank you. All right, take a couple more. We have f of x equals x to the 4th plus x squared minus 12. How many terms do we have? 3 terms. We have 3 terms. We have a trinomial. What are we going to try to do? We're going to try to factor. Trinomial, try to factor. First times first is x to the 4th. What times what is x to the 4th? X squared times x squared. Good. And then last times last has to be negative 12. What times what is negative 12? Positive 4 and negative 3. Good choice. How do you know if you did that right? Rainbow. Check the rainbow. Good idea. These are simple. We've factored. We're down to x squared. So I can actually go ahead and just set each bubble equal to 0. It's not necessary to factor further. All right. So x squared plus 4 equals 0. How do I solve for x? Subtract 4. Good. And then How do I get x by itself? Square root. Don't forget the plus or minus. Don't forget the plus or minus. Super important. The negative under the radical gives me an I. And what's the square root of 4? 2. So we get plus or minus 2i. We have x squared minus 3 equals 0. How do I isolate x? Add 3 to both sides. Good. And then how do you get x by itself? Square root. Don't forget the plus or minus. So we get x equals plus or minus. I can't simplify the 3, so it just stays under the radical. Radical 3 doesn't have any perfect squares in it, so it stays. And again, we have 2 imaginary solutions and 2 real solutions for a total of 4 solutions for x. Letter D, we have f of x equals x cubed minus x squared minus 2x. God, you're all writing, you're working, you're copying. Good for you. Hard at work, heads down, plugging away. Good for you. Some of you. All right. What do you notice about letter D? There's 3 terms. What about those 3 terms? There's a GCF. Very good. Paying attention there. They have a GCF. Always good idea to look for that GCF. What do they have in common? X. So we're going to take out the X. What's left behind when I take out the X?
X²
Good. X squared?
minus x equals 2.
Oh, minus 2. Very good. Minus 2. Good. So I took out an x from each term. That lowered all those powers. But now I still have a trinomial here, so I'm going to try to factor that. I'm going to see if I can. What times what is x squared? X times x. And then last times last has to be negative 2. What times what is negative 2? Negative 2 and positive 1. I think that's going to work for us. Hey, that's handy. Negative 2 and positive 1. And then how do we solve for x? All right, set each thing. Even our x gets set equal to 0. And here our x minus 2 gets set equal to 0. And x plus 1 gets set equal to 0. How do you isolate x? Add 2 and subtract 1. So in this one, we had 3 real solutions for our highest power of 3. It's kind of nice, right? Okay, I have one more. Last one. Last one. F of x equals x to the 4th minus x cubed plus 2x squared minus 4x minus 8. How many terms does this one have? 5 terms. Can I factor by hand? Synthetic division. Yeah, I can't do this one by hand, so I have to go to synthetic division. S-Y-N-T-H-E-T-I-C. Synthetic division. Which means you might need your graphing calculator. You might need Desmos today. So we have to get something from our calculators. So we want to go and plug that in. X to the 4th minus x cubed plus 2x squared minus 4x, God bless you, minus 8. So I have that plugged into my calculator. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a zoom standard, zoom 6, to look at a picture. And I definitely need to sketch that little picture. What do you see on that little picture?
A U.
Kind of like a U shape, yeah. And it looks like it's passing through at -1 maybe and 2. So I only see 2 real solutions. How many solutions should there be? 4. And so we have a little bit of a problem. That means that we have some imaginary solutions. Let's see what we can do here. I'm going to go ahead and use -1 in my synthetic division. So I have 1x to the 4th minus 1x cubed plus 2x squared minus 4x minus 8. So I'm writing down all my coefficients. And then I'm going to do the division. All right, how do I do that? Bring down the 1. All right, and then what do we do? 1 times -1. What's 1 times -1? -1. And then we combine. -1 and -1 makes -2. And we multiply. +2. And we combine. 4. And we multiply. -4. -8. +8. Remainder 0. Remainder 0. And guess what you can do, ladies and gentlemen, because really synthetic division, once you've got it going, is really easy to do. So, well, we have 4 terms. This is the polynomial x cubed minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 8. It's 4 terms. I could do factor by grouping, but I can also actually, because I have another 0 here, I'm going to do piggyback synthetic division. So I'm going to do another one right off my quotient here. I'm going to use my other 0. So I'm going to use my 2 and do synthetic division again instead of going through the whole GCF process, which is kind of cool. So again, I'm going to bring down my 1. And we multiply 1 times 2, 2. Combine, 0. Multiply 0 times 2, 0. 0 plus 4 is 4. And multiply, we get 8. Remainder 0. What's this quotient mean? So what we just showed was we showed that x equals -1 was a 0. We just showed that x equals 2 was a 0. And what's this leftover bit here? X squared, 1x squared, plus 0x plus 4. That is the last thing that I need to solve. How do I solve for x? Subtract 4, good. So we have -4 equals x squared. And how do you get x by itself? Square root. Don't forget the plus or minus. So we have x equals plus or minus. What's the square root of a negative? I. And what's the square root of 4? 2. And these are our 2 imaginary solutions. The only way to get imaginary solutions is to solve either, this last part, you have to do the algebra. There's no other way to do it. So today you might need to use your calculators or your cell phones if you need to go to Desmos. Again, if you can't factor them by hand, okay? So that's usually the fastest route. Do you have any questions for me? Very first page? Yes.